Neffy wants.
Hang on. I want to get Nephilim in here. So if somebody wants to, yeah, let's get Nephi in here.
Kick out Chorus.
Oh dear.
Yeah, Chorus. I was leaving one spot open.
I'll
Just be the last person to come in. I'm sorry, man.
If y'all will do me the honor, if Neffy does get in here, I get first dibs.
Yeah, but let him speak.
Okay,
first
here's
dibs on what?
the thing with Nephi. Yeah. Okay, Chorus, go ahead and if you can drop for him. Now, Evan, we're going to get you in here. I don't want anybody talking over Nephi, and I don't want people muting him. First person that mutes him, besides me, I'm gonna eject.
I'm gonna go.
All right, thank you, Chorus. Hey, Nephi, go ahead and come on in. He's leaving right now.
Let me get first dibs. That's
okay.
Evening,
so we're gonna keep this very simple.
Wow, that was fast.
Hope you had a
Good
good
evening,
New
Nephilim. How are you this evening?
He was like spamming that click button, dude. Hope you had a good New Year's, Evan.
Good evening.
So, go ahead and continue. Reg wants to talk to you first. We're going to keep this on the up and up. Nobody's going to mute you. Nobody's going to talk over you. Okay. But we are going to limit everybody to 2 minutes max. I think that's more than enough to make a point.
I had trouble.
And please show this courtesy to the others.
Steve, I want to make a point about the name of the hangout, though. If you honestly believe, now I'm not trying to be cruel.
Go ahead.
But if you honestly believe the premise of the name of this hangout, there's a delusion happening. Really. To believe that the Christians are lying for Jeebus.
No. It's not about Christians. I've never said anything about Christians, my friend.
Well, creationists then are.
Okay, but as I mentioned before, when I say creationists, I'm only talking about young earthers and maybe some ideas.
I see it as completely opposite of the name of the. I find it a joke. But that being said.
Well, we're going to find out if it's the truth or not. I mean, like I said, there are a few. I mean, here's a question. I've mentioned that I think Wayne is pretty intellectually honest. I believe Peripheral Prophet is pretty intellectually honest. CJ Dub is pretty intellectually honest, but I wouldn't consider him a creationist. So, but we'll find out. But go ahead. Reg really wants to talk to you for a few minutes. I'm going to go AFK for like a few minutes. I can hear though, so I'll be back in a second.
I got mods, so if it gets out of control, you know what will happen to all you.
Get back.
Yeah.
Fear me and obey.
Polite and calm.
Yep. Anyway, so yeah. What's the problem with the title? There's a delusion there. It's basically a question.
Well, yeah, I know. The thing is, I would say, knowing what I know about evolution creation, I would have to say that there's an awful lot of intellectual dishonesty that exists in the way that evolutionists treat science. And so based on that, I would say that the opposite of the title is true.
How? I mean, because everything that I've seen from the creationist camp or the evolution camp, most of the dishonesty, if not all of the dishonesty, falls on the creationists. Well, and most, if not all, of the true hard science comes from the evolution side of the table.
Yeah, I disagree that evolution is science. It's philosophy, not science. You said how, so let me give you an example. Evolutionists are still clinging to this idea that random genetic mutation is the beautiful mechanism of evolution acted upon by natural selection, and then, becomes changes genetic drift and changes to allele frequency, blah blah blah. But they've been clinging to this idea that random genetic mutations builds all this fantastical stuff in living things, makes creatures that are fit for survival, and yet 90 years of genetic studies have demonstrated that mutation is no such thing. It designs no anatomical feature. It doesn't build in by increment any kind of structural designs in the things that's ever been observed, and it does nothing but produce a list of diseases as long as you're armed. So that is on one side we have the science of genetic study of mutations and what the effects of them are, against the completely absurd, absolutely opposite of that belief, wild belief system of the evolutionist, that mutation is quite the opposite of what science shows us that it is.
Oh, stop it, Neff. I already educated you on why, evolution is science. We already know that.
So how could evolutionism be scientific when evolutionists refuse to accept 90 years of study of mutation?
For the very reasons that I explained in the debate.
Hang on, let's go ahead to someone who actually understands science. Fiona, go ahead, make your rebuttal, please.
Yeah.
Uninterrupted.
Neff made the point that evolutionists are just clinging to this thing about random mutation. And I would just point out that, we're talking about modern synthesis, which also includes epigenetics, horizontal gene transfer. So nobody is making this claim that it's a random, as in just by chance. That's not the claim that's made. That is not what anybody is claiming. We also know that given that evolution is natural selection acting upon genetic variation, the fact that there is selection in there makes it selected and not random. And as I said, if you're talking about the mutations, there are other mechanisms of genetic variation that are included in the modern synthesis. It is not just random mutation.
Okay, but epigenetic factors being turned on and off are never going to produce new genes that code for new features. So.
That's not the point that you actually made. You were making a claim about random, and you only brought that up.
Are you saying?
Now, I'm pointing out that there are other mechanisms that are included in the modern synthesis.
Are you claiming that epigenetics?
It seems that you're fighting against exactly what Darwin described, and you're completely disregarding all of the further studies that have been done.
Darwin
and the better understanding that we have of the evolutionary process and the evolutionary mechanism.
Darwin didn't describe that. DNA was not known in his day.
No, but he just described random selection. Sorry, random mutation, natural selection.
Well, evolution pasted the idea of mutation onto Darwin's idea once it was discovered.
Neffy, we did not interrupt you. Please let Fiona say what she has to say without interrupting her.
I thought she was finished 3 times.
No, we don't think that. Just wait.
Minor correction. He didn't paste it on. Darwin didn't know about mutations, but he knew there had been some mechanism. I mean, he just had a placeholder. He called it pangenesis. But the mutations that we found were perfectly in line of what he was expecting to find that he didn't know existed.
Yeah. He even said in his writings that he thought that natural selection was the main but not exclusive means of modification.
I'd like to see the support for that idea that mutations do what Darwin said. But Fiona, I was trying to ask you. So are you do realize, don't you, that if you have a set genome and you have epigenetic switches that can turn genes on and off, that's never going to code for new information that results in new features to explain the phylogenetic tree of life that evolutionists believe in, right? So epigenetics, you don't actually believe that epigenetics can explain phylogeny according to the evolutionists, do you? Are you saying that?
Did I say that?
Well, you said other mechanisms and you mentioned epigenetics.
Did I say it was all down to epigenetics?
No, don't straw man.
No, I didn't, did I?
You said there were other mechanisms, and you mentioned epigenetics.
Do you get to answer your question? I didn't say it was just epigenetics. There's a whole interplay of a number of factors.
I didn't say.
That's what you have to remember, that there's a number of factors, and it's the interplay of them all. And one of the things is variation in the genetic code. That's one of them. And another one is horizontal gene transfer. It's going to give you that variation. So it's not just a mutation within the DNA that the organism already has. We do know that in bacteria we have horizontal gene transfer, where whole genes can be transferred from one to the other. But that's not the only mechanism. Similarly, epigenetic changes is not claimed to be the only mechanism either. And you seem to want to nail it down to one of them, and only one of them, and you're not taking into account all of the other aspects that play a role in this, and also the role that the selection plays in this.
So, Fiona, I didn't say that you said only epigenetic. You're trying to straw man what I say. My question. I didn't say that you said only epigenetic is the explanation for it. I simply asked you. You said there are other factors, and you cited epigenetics, and so I'm asking you, my question was, you don't actually believe that switches turning genes on and off is ever going to produce the new genetic information necessary to code for new structural design that will result in a fundamentally different type of organism arising, so that we can say the Darwinian tree of life is true, is a real thing, and if the evolutionists' idea of phylogenetics is true, right? So now also,
can I answer that question?
I would like you to, but you also mentioned horizontal gene transfer, and so I would ask you, I don't see how that's any different from random genetic mutation or any other genetic process that goes on. Where is the scientific evidence that in these operations, that these processes that occur relating to genetics codes for the information necessary to produce new structural design that results in a phylogenetic tree of life? Where's the evidence of that?
Right, now, Nephilim, could you ask your first question again, please?
I asked you if you believe, you cited that it's not just random mutation, you said that, and cited epigenetics as another.
I asked you to ask the question. What was your first question?
You don't actually believe that epigenetics is going to produce the genetic change that produces a new structural design that will result in an organism moving towards becoming a fundamentally different type of creature.
Yeah, that isn't actually the first question you asked. I've remembered it.
Well,
you asked me if you see. This is why I'd like to deal with one question at a time and not a speech at a time.
If I can make a rule, one question at a time from now on.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm just going to be sitting here taking notes.
His first question was epigenetics and relating to morphological things.
Yeah, no, and it's okay. I remember the question now. The question was, did I believe
new structures
that the switching on and off of genes was going to somehow give rise to new genetic information that will give new anatomical features? The answer is no. By definition, if you switch on a gene, the gene must already be there.
Excellent.
So no, I mean, seriously, that's a non-question.
Absolutely.
Okay, can I ask Evan a question too?
Because you include, Steve, let me finish. What he did was he included in that giving rise to new genetic information. That's not just new anatomical features. He included in that do I believe that switching on and off of genes can give rise to new genetic information? And by definition, switching a gene on or off is not giving rise to new genetic information.
Great.
Because the genome has not changed, right?
So the question you asked me was completely malformed.
No, I wasn't malformed. I'm glad you acknowledged that, though. So then why would you cite epigenetics as a mechanism for evolutionary change?
Because epigenetics isn't just switching genes on and off.
Well, we need to qualify something, Fiona. Let's ask Nephi, when you're saying epigenetics, can you give us specific examples of epigenetics, and we can talk about them specifically? There's a lot of different types of epigenetics. I could think of at least 4 or 5 things that can control gene expression right now. Can you give us one, and can we discuss that more in depth? So what type of gene expression would you like to discuss, and we can explain to you why it eventually will have an effect on the genome further down the line, not necessarily in like one generation. It is inheritable, but natural selection can act upon these phenotypical traits that are being produced by the epigenetics. So give me an example of an epigenetics, and let's talk about that.
I know the story, but the thing is,
answer the question.
The gene expression, and that's how we should sum up epigenetics right there. Let's do it that way, because that keeps it simple for everybody. Can you tell me how gene expression, expressing genes that already exist, is a mechanism for moving a creature towards becoming a fundamentally different type of organism?
Nobody's making that claim.
I didn't make that argument.
Why do you cite epigenetics as a mechanism in your evolutionary
epigenetics isn't just switching on and off of genes. Within the cell, there are genes being switched on and off all the time. They're called inducible genes. One of the best examples of that is the lac operon in bacteria, where you have a whole gang of genes that are required to metabolize lactose. If there is no lactose present, none of the genes are expressed. And when lactose is present, the whole operon is switched on. That's an inducible gene. You always get changes in gene expression in cells. That's what happens in cells. But that's not an epigenetic change. That's just control of gene expression, differential gene expression.
So then are you saying to me? So are you saying then that epigenetics is not a base mechanism for evolution, right? It had to. It would have to.
No, you just asked me a question.
It would have to operate on top.
No, you just asked me a question there.
Now you're interrupting me. Hold on. Okay.
No, you asked a question. Fiona's going to answer now. Go ahead.
You said, so are you saying epigenetics is not a base mechanism? Well, considering that only, 5 minutes ago, I said it is one of the mechanisms. I don't get why you're asking that question, unless you're attempting to misrepresent me. Because I said epigenetics has a role to play in this, as does mutation, as does horizontal gene transfer. There's a whole plethora of mechanisms that will give you heritable changes.
As does external forces such as environment.
Control gene expression in normal circumstances isn't one of them.
Don't be so quick to mute me, because I asked a question and then I attempted to give a little bit of information to qualify the question.
But then we forget the question.
Because the question mark comes at the end of the first sentence that I say, doesn't give you cause.
You have a long history of rambling, Neff. So.
Yeah, I know that's your spiel, and that's the game evolution.
No, it's a fact.
So one sentence doesn't qualify for a.
Let's get back to the epigenetics.
Right? You might ask a question, and then I want to make a statement or two behind it, so you'll understand.
You asked the question, we gave an answer.
Well, then, learn how to debate, okay, and you'll get creationism.
Well, first of all, this is not a debate, Evan. This is a discussion. And this is why I didn't want anybody muting him or like that. And I read, as I said, no, don't mute him, because this is exactly what happens, because we know better. And I'm going to stop giving people controls, because you had no reason to hide him from broadcast, because he was asking a question, but he was actually expounding upon it.